Gaining muscle isn't a fast process, but there are definitely some things that you can dial in to make sure that you're optimizing your muscle building potential. So let's talk about it. The first thing you want to think about to optimize your muscle building potential is making sure that you're following a proper resistance training program. So with that, just making sure that you're following a structured, smart, well laid out program that you can progress in over time is going to be super, super important. You also want to make sure that you're following a program that you can actually adhere to. So if the program is not fun for you, if you're not enjoying it, then it's not going to be something that you can be consistent with. So that's super important to make sure that you are following a program that you enjoy and that's fun, but you're also progressing over time. The next thing you want to make sure that you're paying attention to is that you're progressively overloading over time. So this just means making sure that you're doing a little bit more every time you go into your lifting session, whether that means, lifting a little bit heavier weight, doing another rep, having better form. All of those are forms of progressive overload. They're not the only forms of progressive overload, but in order to, progress over time, you need to make sure that you're doing a little bit more. Your body is going to adapt to what you're doing. So if you're not giving it a reason to grow, it's not going to grow. So making sure that you're pushing yourself, you have, enough intensity in your workouts and that you're progressing within, each week, month, whatever it may be, and also tracking that progression, right? So if you're not tracking what you're doing, how are you going to know that you're progressing? So make sure that you have a logbook or, an Excel sheet or something that you can track your weights, track your reps, and make sure you're doing that every single session so that you can look back each week and, try to beat that rep or try to beat that weight. You don't necessarily have to do that every single week, but if you look back, over a period of a month, for example, you want to make sure that you are moving in the right direction. The next major thing that you want to make sure that you're focusing on to optimize your muscle building potential is going to be recovering. So making sure that you are recovering properly, making sure that you are sleeping, making sure that you're fueling appropriately for what you're doing. So, incorporating enough protein in your day, making sure that you are, optimizing your pre and post workout nutrition. That is something that's going to be important over time, and making sure that you get enough energy for your workout, pre-workout, and then also making sure that you have enough recovery after your workout in terms of the fuel sources that you're using for that. So making sure that you're recovering both, sleep, like I said, fueling appropriately, stress management. Stress is going to be a huge piece of it as well. If you're not managing your stress, then you're not going to be in the ideal situation to build muscle because it's just going to have a domino effect on everything else you're doing. So make sure that you're optimizing your recovery as much as possible. And this also comes with, making sure that you're not doing too much. So more is not always better, especially when it comes to lifting weights. You want to make sure that you are recovering and, getting appropriate fuel, getting appropriate sleep to maximize that muscle building potential. The next thing that you want to think about when you're, optimizing your muscle building potential is making sure that you're fueling appropriately. So the first thing is, if your main goal is to build as much muscle as possible and optimize that, you want to make sure that you're eating enough food, and particularly eating at maintenance intake or above. So when I say that, your maintenance caloric intake is just the amount of food you can eat to maintain your weight. And then, a little bit above that is going to be going into potentially a slight surplus. So we know that if you go into a slight calorie surplus, you're really putting your body in the optimal position to build as much muscle as possible because you're having adequate fuel coming in, which is going to lead to, enough energy during your workouts or more energy during your workouts. And then it's also going to lead to better recovery. So just making sure that you're eating enough calories in general is super important, whether that's around your maintenance intake or in a slight surplus. You also want to make sure that you're thinking about protein intake. So protein is super, super important when it comes to building muscle, making sure you're optimizing that, especially throughout the day. So thinking about, your protein throughout the day, I like to say if you're consuming, 3 to 4 meals throughout the day, you want to make sure that you're getting a good amount of protein in each of those meals. Typically, 25 to 30 grams can be the bare minimum for that. That's going to allow you to optimize your muscle protein synthesis at that meal. And all that means is that muscle protein synthesis is the process of your body basically building new muscle. And to optimize that, you want to make sure you're getting enough protein in each of your meals and also spreading that out throughout the day. Some people thrive on a lower carb, higher fat diet, and some people thrive on a higher carb, lower fat diet. And then a lot of people can thrive in the middle, and that's where metabolic flexibility comes into play. So when it comes to building muscle, particularly from my experience, following a lower carb ketogenic diet can be very, very beneficial for a lot of reasons. But if your goal is to optimize your muscle building potential, you need to understand that carbs can be your friend. So you don't necessarily want to restrict carbs to a very low degree if your goal is to optimize your muscle building potential, because like I said, carbs are super important for recovery, for fueling. So you want to make sure that you are just kind of testing and assessing for yourself. Some people do really, really well with lower carbs. Some people do great with carbs just around their workout. Some people do great with higher carbs throughout the day. And it really just depends on you. So I would test and assess and see how you feel. But again, if your main goal is to build as much muscle as possible, don't be afraid to consume carbs, because that's going to help to fuel that muscle growth and fuel that recovery. So building muscle is definitely not a fast process, but if you get everything dialed in that I just talked about, or at least work on getting those things dialed in, you're going to put yourself in a really, really good position. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to learn more about nutrition, fitness, or metabolic flexibility, you can check out our website, metflexlife.com. There you can find our podcast, MetFlex and Chill, our nutrition and exercise programs, our latest blog posts, free recipes, and much more.